Mass deportation is now certain to happen. The centre ground of British politics has been abandoned. It was probably inevitable because everybody was clustering there. This was the conventional wisdom. This is how you won elections. Blair proved it, Cameron proved it, and in a strange sort of way, Jeremy Corbyn proved it. But there was a looming problem. The economy wasn't growing much and houses were getting more and more expensive. Crime seemed to be on an ever upward trajectory and immigration never stopped. People began to notice it didn't matter who you voted for, you got the uniparty. If you don't believe me, ask yourself what are the significant policy differences between, say, Blair, Cameron, Gordon Brown, Theresa May, or Rishi Sunak. Name 3 ideological differences that spring to mind. Can you name even one? You can't, because they're ideologically the same. Even on touchstone issues like Brexit, I'm not entirely convinced Boris Johnson actually believed anything he said. The cynic in me wonders if he simply saw Brexit as a device to elevate him to leader of the Conservative Party and, of course, Prime Minister. And as social democratic politics runs aground all across Europe, the voters are beginning to notice. The election of Trump in 2016 forewarned of this trend, but the established political parties ignored the warning. They fell back on the tired old tropes of denouncing Trump as a fascist, racist, Nazi, blah, blah, blah. And as well as Brexit, we're seeing the rise of bona fide right-wing parties throughout Europe. France has the National Front, Germany's AfD. I don't include Reform UK in this. I think they're essentially just 1980s conservatives. Well, that's all very interesting, I hear you say, but why is deportation now inevitable? Well, simply this. As little as 5 years ago, you couldn't talk about deportation in polite company. The only people who did were regarded as lunatics and dismissed as cranks and fascists. But the horizon window has shifted far and fast. A year ago, Farage dismissed talk of mass deportation, but as usual, he's leading from the rear, and now he talks about it. And that is the really interesting thing. Just as people have woken up to the uniparty pantomime, I think they're beginning to notice the lack of substantive detail from Reform. In one sense, Reform is simply doing what made Blair so popular, listening to people's concerns in focus groups and repeating them back. But people are wising up. There's no meat on the bone. There's no detail. And people are becoming frustrated, even with Reform. Also, in the last few months, a commentator on Twitter was complaining that the Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons was not British. This seemed to spark a wide debate as regards immigrant representation in British politics in general. So, deportation is firmly on the agenda. This obviously won't come from establishment political parties. They've all realised it's necessary to talk tough on immigration, but that's all it will be, talk. Who can forget that Muppet Sunak with the "Stop the Boats" written on his lectern? He didn't stop a single boat any more than our beloved leader has smashed any gangs. The establishment simply don't want to. And this is by no means a purely British phenomena. Many of the countries in Western Europe are being destroyed by mass immigration, similarly the United States, Canada and Australia. The only countries that seem to have resisted so far are the Eastern European nations like Poland or Hungary. Coincidentally, there don't seem to be any Islamic terror attacks in Warsaw. When it comes to YouTube, they don't like certain words, so let's call it romantic violence. Poland's official rate of non-consensual encounters was 1.3 per 100,000 in 2023. The figure in Britain is 117, 90 times as much. To be clear, not 90% more, 90 times more. I wonder why that is. There does seem to be this weird correlation between the number of immigrants you have in a country and the rates of non-consensual encounters. Is that a coincidence? So where will change come from? Well, of course, it all depends who wins the next election and when that will be. Assuming a Farage government wins, they might introduce tougher immigration controls, make some welfare tweaks which lead to some people engaging in voluntary deportation or self-deportation. They might also pay some people to leave, but that's just modern Danegeld, and like any payment to criminals to stop being criminal, it just encourages others. The real difference will be made when we run out of cash. That's coming. Quite often when politicians don't want to make changes, they're forced to by reality. So a Farage government running out of cash would mean welfare didn't get paid, and then we'd see some extremely agitated immigrants on the streets of various towns and cities. The media would pretend this was everybody. We'd see images of white people rioting as well. But the riots will have a significant ethnic component, and this might radicalize people. When Axel Rudikabana killed those little girls, people were incensed. We could see more of that. And with the imposed welfare reforms, more people will self-deport. But the real change will come when we get a genuine right-wing government. I don't entirely rule out the possibility of a Rupert Lowe-led right-wing coalition which knocks off Reform to become the new party of the right. They'll need funding, and if they can get it, they will either become the new right-wing party or force Reform to the right. Either way, this is when deportations can start in earnest. It can't happen too soon. Remember, the past is in our heads, but the future is in our hands. If you've made it this far, can I ask you to like, recommend, and subscribe, because it's important that ordinary, decent people like you and I help get this message out.